Before you draft James Harden this fantasy basketball season, make sure you watch this video. Hey everyone, this is the talented Mr. Taco coming to you from the Daily Sporting with another fantasy basketball tips video. In this video, we're going over James Harden. Now, James Harden this year is going to be a very polarizing figure in fantasy basketball. Perennially, he's one of the best players in the game. And if we look at his numbers from last year, he was an absolute monster. He shot 44% from the field. He shot 86% from the free throw line. He shot he made 4 threes a game. Okay, he had 34 points a game, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, 1.8 steals, almost a block, and 4.5 turnovers per game. So let's put it like this. This guy was balling. Yeah, he had a lot of turnovers, but other than that, he was super solid. I mean, his field goal is a little low, but that free throw was super high. Those 3 points are insane. He has great points, rebounds, steals, and assists for a guard. So he's definitely one of the best players in the game, but let's be honest, there's more going on than just putting up stats this season for James Harden. He's requested to be traded from the Houston Rockets, and it's looking more and more like that they're going to accommodate that wish just from the way James Harden's been acting. And as we saw in the initial picture, James Harden doesn't look like he's in the best shape to start the season. He's just reported to training camp, and the season starts in a week. So all those factors lead me to believe that James Harden is a much bigger risk than he normally would be. Normally he'd be going as the number 1 guy. In this type of league or this year, I can see him dropping a lot further because you want to go with a sure, safe bet. So honestly, I would be taking a Luka Doncic over a guy like James Harden this year because I think Luka is a lot safer, and we all expect Luka to get a little bit better. I mean, Luka's getting near averaging a triple-double as well. So Luka has a ton of upside, and I think he might have moved in to the number 1 spot. Anthony Davis is right there. One of the reasons why is we expect LeBron James to be sitting more than he did last year, just because of the quick turnaround that we're having from last year to this year. So the offseason wasn't as long as it normally was for him to recuperate, and we all know they just played in the finals. He's getting older. They've already limited him on back-to-backs. So with all of that said, I do expect Anthony Davis to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting with the Lakers and getting more playing time and playing more games than LeBron James, and I think that's reflected in these rankings that we see here, why Davis is at 3 and LeBron James is at 12. I would take Karl-Anthony Towns over James Harden. The reason why I would take Towns over James Harden is because he's one of those rare big men. He gets a high field goal, high free throw. He hits 3.3 threes a game. He averages a double-double, and he gets 1.2 blocks per game. He does average 3 turnovers, so that's a little high for a big man, but overall his stats are fantastic, and I would take him over a guy like Harden only because center isn't a position that you normally get these stats, and because James Harden, let's face it, with all the question marks around him, you don't want your first pick to be in a quagmire for most of the season, because then it puts you at a disadvantage, and it makes the rest of your draft super important, where you have to hit on late guys that produce several rounds above where you draft him. So if you draft a guy in the 10th round, you need him to play like a 7th rounder in order to help make up for the loss that you have with a guy like James Harden if he doesn't play, if he gets traded to a bad situation, because that's the other thing we have to think about with James Harden. There's a very good possibility he could get traded, and when he gets traded, he gets put into a bad situation. Well, not a bad situation, but a worse situation than he's now, where he won't have the ball all the time, where it's not like the whole offense is run through him, where games aren't just basically James Harden go out there and score like it was last year with D'Antoni, which is another thing that we have to think about with James Harden. This is his first year with a different coach, not D'Antoni. D'Antoni was a fast-paced, get the ball to James, let James do whatever he has to do kind of coach. I don't know how Silas is going to play this. I don't know what Silas plans on doing. And with John Wall and Boogie Cousins looking halfway decent, I don't see them just being like, here, James, just go do everything. So I definitely think that's something to temper expectations. I love Steph Curry here, But Steph Curry to me and James Harden, that's a real toss-up. But I do think Curry's in such a safer situation that I probably would lean toward Curry. Greek Freak, I definitely take Greek Freak over a Harden. I probably could put Greek Freak up closer. And what really shocks me is that Greek Freak averaged 1.3 threes made per 1.4 threes per game. He has center eligibility in Yahoo, which is insane. So I definitely would take Greek Freak over Harden. Jokic, I would do the same. His all-around stat line is really appealing. When you look at it, he gets points, rebounds, assists. Lillard is another one that I would take over Harden, because if you look at what he was doing before he got hurt last season, he was one of the top 5 players in the game, probably top 3. I would probably take Lillard over Curry, just because when you look at Lillard's efficiency, 46% from the field, 88% from the line, 4.1 threes per game, 30 points per game, 8 assists per game, 1 steals per game, two turnovers a game. I think that I might have Davis 1 and Lillard 2, or it's really close in between. But Lillard, I think, and Towns and Davis and Doncic and Greek Freak, those are all guys that I would take over Harden. I'd probably take Curry over Harden, but that's a little bit tougher. I would take Jokic over Harden. Trae Young, I wouldn't take over Harden. I just don't trust Trae Young. Trae Young could be really solid, but he's shooting 43% from the field. He averages 4 turnovers a game. He doesn't really get the rebounds because he only gets 4.3. His assists are decently high. His points and his 3 points are high. But I don't know how that's going to work out with Rondo on the team now. I think Rondo could definitely eat into some of his assist totals, and he might play more off ball, which would lower Trae Young's value. He may be better in real life, but for fantasy basketball, it's really about putting up stats and being on the court, and that's what really helps your value. I wouldn't draft Booker and James Harden. I think that's the first time where it's like a real debate where you'll probably end up going James Harden, but you'll think about it. Tatum is another one who I think it's one of those guys that you think about, but you probably still take James Harden. LeBron James, I think, because of the way this season is set up and the fact that we don't know what's going on with how he's going to play, you got to fade him a little bit. But then when you look at his numbers, he shot 49% from the field. He shot almost 70% from the line. He had 2 threes a game, 25 points. He had 8 rebounds and 10 assists a game with 1.2 steals. So that those are pretty crazy numbers. When you compare him to a guy like Kawhi shoots significantly better from the free throw line. But he gets way less assists, so that's kind of like a wash there. And Kevin Durant, I think this is the end of the line with players that no, Joel Embiid is the end of the line, because 23 and 11 with 3 assists from a big man, with 1.3 blocks, 1.1 steals, 47% from the field goal, and 80% from the line. I think this is kind of like where you're going to be at between Harden and Embiid. I would definitely take Luka, Davis, Towns, Greek Freak, Jokic, Lillard, Durant, Embiid, LeBron over Harden. Curry, I'm a little bit more skeptical about. I wouldn't take Young. I wouldn't take Booker. I wouldn't take Tatum. I wouldn't take Kawhi over Harden, though. Harden, to me, is still above these guys. And again, I think that we have to watch how these final 2 preseason games go. Harden still put up his numbers. I just don't know what kind of situation he's going to be in. Is his stamina up? What kind of game style and game flow are they going to run with him in there? Is it going to really be him on the ball as much as it was just isolating and taking shots and scoring? Or is it going to be more of a team game where they're passing the rock around, which really will hurt his overall numbers? Because then if he's not scoring 34 points and he's back to scoring 26 points, then what do we look at for his numbers? Like, is he there still? Do you still take him over a guy like, I don't know, Kevin Durant, who might get center eligibility this season, and you'd be looking at a small forward, power forward, center. Would you take him over a Greek freak who's been, back-to-back MVP? I wouldn't. I mean, Kevin Durant and Harden, I think that's the first toss-up. I think that LeBron James and Harden, that's a real toss-up. Kawhi Leonard and Harden, that's a real toss-up. Tatum, I wouldn't take over Harden. Booker, I wouldn't take over Harden. Young, I wouldn't take over Harden. I think these are the main guys that you really got to be looking at. Damian Lillard, Jokic, Antetokounmpo, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis, Luka Doncic. I think these 6 guys are the 6 guys I definitely take over James Harden, with Harden, Curry, Young, Booker, Tatum, James, Durant, Leonard, and Embiid really being guys that you have to see what kind of team you want to run, how everything's been playing out. If you've drafted already, obviously, you're just going off of pure speculation yet because we've only had 2 preseason games. But that's just really my thoughts on James Harden right now. Roughly where you should have him. In my rankings, he's probably anywhere from like 7 in the 7 to 10 range, really. And that's just, again, because there's so much uncertainty between him being not in shape and between him possibly being traded to a situation where he may not command the ball as much, which would hurt his overall numbers. If he's averaging 1 less 3 a game made, averaging 5 less points per game made, he keeps maybe like 1 less turnover, but his field goal stays the same, he's not going to be the number 1 player. It's just not going to happen. That's just too much stats for him to come off of. And I think that this is the year where Luka, we expect Luka to take a next step. Greek freak, he just got paid and he's been delivering as a top player. Karl Anthony Towns with that lineup, I think we expect a lot from him. Anthony Davis, we expect people to rely on him. Dame time has been ridiculous. So I think these are some guys that you definitely got to look at. If you have a shot at Harden early on, it might be better to pass on him, let someone else deal with the uncertainty. Take one of these guys that you know is going to put up points and numbers that'll be close to what Harden does, and then go with your next pick and make those decisions. Now, if you're looking at a guy like Trae Young or James Harden, then that really depends on how many picks do you pick again, how much do you trust it, and stuff like that. If you go in Steph Curry or James Harden, again, it's the same situation where you're like, who do I like? Who like that? Those are really tough situations. Like if you're picking 7, 8, 9, that's going to be really tough to pass up on James Harden over some of these guys, and that's I think where you're going to have to really put some strategy into it and some thought into what you want to do with your team. But I hope that this video was helpful for you guys, give you an idea of, what to be looking at if you have, James Harden, set up to be drafted in your league, or you haven't drafted yet and you're thinking about what to do, or if you're in a keeper league and you have James Harden and you might want to field some offers. I think that you're going to be getting depressed offers at this point in time, or where they're not going to be giving you the same value that you would have gotten, last season. And I think at this point in time, your best bet is just to hold Harden and hope that he goes into a situation where he's able to increase his numbers, or he starts to play for Houston, he plays good, and maybe someone wants to take that risk. But I would be looking to move Harden if I was in keeper leagues, try to get more assets, maybe some future picks, but I would be like Houston is now. I would be shopping for the best deal. I wouldn't deal him off just because it's a bad situation, but I would be open to dealing him. But again, that's my James Harden thoughts. I mean, I think when we saw that picture yesterday, everyone's immediately was like, oh, wow, is that Ricky Ross? Is that Kendrick Perkins? Like, what's poppin', bro? So that's something that I think we all noticed, and I think that was something I had to make a video on. I have a couple of more mock drafts coming up. I'm going to break down the top 20 players coming up as well before this season starts. I have a draft on Saturday and I have a draft on Sunday where I think that I'm going to record the drafts for you live and post the video up so you can see how I draft, and I'm going to show you how it's done. So this way, going forward, whether you're drafting after me, whether it's for next year, or whether you just like to follow along, you'll be able to get an idea of how a team is built and how championships are won. Because at the end of the day, the whole reason why we do this is to help you guys win your leagues. So I appreciate everything. The last video had an insane amount of support, and I can't thank everyone enough for what you've done. So yeah, guys, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you guys win your leagues. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. I answer all the questions. And yeah, man, let's get it popping. Peace.